Did you know that half of America is practically empty? It's hard to believe, but there are entire states where the population is so sparse, you'd have to drive for miles to find more than a handful of people. In this video, we're going to take a deep dive into the 9 states where no one seems to live and explore why these places are so empty. From vast stretches of wilderness to industries that never quite took off, we'll uncover the surprising reasons behind these population gaps and what life is like in these quiet corners of the country. Is it the harsh climate, lack of job opportunities, or simply the allure of bustling cities that draws people away? We'll break it all down, examining everything from geography to economics, and give you a closer look at the states where the population density is shockingly low. If you enjoy fascinating insights into America's lesser-known regions, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more content like this. Don't forget to ring the bell for notifications so you never miss an exciting video. Let's jump in and explore why these 9 states remain some of the least populated places in the country. Let's start with Montana, a state that seems like it was pulled straight out of a Wild West movie. Picture this: cowboy hats, horses galloping through open plains, and landscapes so stunning that you might actually wonder if you've wandered onto a movie set. Montana is home to towering mountains that look like they're reaching up to touch the sky, rivers winding through valleys, and sunsets so breathtaking that they could make you believe you're dreaming. Seriously, it's the kind of place that'll have you wanting to throw on a cowboy hat and saddle up for a horseback ride into the horizon. But here's the kicker: despite all of this jaw-dropping beauty, Montana's population is shockingly low. With a population of just over 1.12 million people, it's bigger than Japan in size, but the state is barely populated. To put it in perspective, there's only 1 person for every 10 square miles. You might think that with all that space and natural beauty, everyone would be flocking here, right? But no, the reality is a bit different. The weather is no joke. In the summer, temperatures can soar to scorching highs, making you feel like your ice cream is melting the second you step outside. Then, come winter, things take a drastic turn. We're talking bone-chilling cold that freezes everything in sight. You know those cute snowflakes that fall softly in movies? In Montana, they freeze solid before they hit the ground. Winters here are brutal, with temperatures plunging so low that your breath could freeze midair. Billings, Montana's largest city, only has around 100,000 people, and many of the towns are so remote, they feel more like ghost towns than thriving communities. You might have to drive hours just to get to a Walmart, and even then, it might feel like a road trip just to get supplies. The isolation is real. You could cruise down a highway for miles and not see another car, let alone another person. It's both mesmerizing and slightly eerie, like you're the only one left in a vast, uninhabited world. But if you're someone who dreams of living the rugged cowboy life, Montana might just be your dream come true. However, just be ready to embrace the solitude, endure the extreme weather, and perhaps even witness the occasional tumbleweed rolling down the street. Montana is quiet, wild, and wonderfully remote, which is exactly why it's one of those states that seems to be almost completely empty. Next up, let's talk about Delaware. On paper, this tiny state might seem like the corporate dreamland. With over 2 million corporations calling it home, you'd expect bustling cities, towering skyscrapers, and a vibrant economy. But here's the plot twist: Delaware's actual population is just a little over 1 million people. That's right, more companies than people. It's like a business hub, yet it feels like a sleepy, underrated corner of the country. You might expect major urban centers, but Delaware doesn't quite fit that mold. The biggest city, Wilmington, only has about 70,000 residents. To put that in perspective, the entire population of Wilmington could easily fit inside a mid-sized football stadium. So, where's the population? Why isn't Delaware packed to the brim with people? Well, a big part of it comes down to its proximity to Philadelphia, which is just 30 miles away. It's like that one friend who always seems to steal the spotlight. Philadelphia gobbled up all the attention, leaving Delaware in the dust. So instead of the hustle and bustle of a major metropolitan area, Delaware feels more like a coastal retreat for retirees than a booming city. Picture this: quiet, serene beaches, charming little towns, and a pace of life that's so slow it could make a snail look like it's in a race. It's a state where you're more likely to spot a beach umbrella than a tech startup. But here's the kicker: those 2 million corporations don't really add much to the job market. While they might have their headquarters here, Delaware offers 0 state income tax, so companies don't need to create jobs or offer anything to the local economy. It's like they're here in name, only like a friend who crashes on your couch and never pitches in for rent. Because of this, Delaware's economy thrives mostly on beach tourism and retirement living, not big corporate expansions. If you're looking for a fast-paced corporate job, Delaware isn't where you'll find it. But if you're seeking a peaceful life by the beach, where you can enjoy low taxes and a slower pace, Delaware might be just the spot for you. So, while Delaware might be bustling with businesses, it's one of the least populated states, and a place where the corporate world doesn't quite match the reality of everyday life. Whether you want a peaceful retirement or just a little beach escape, Delaware's unique charm is hard to beat. 3. Let's move on to North Dakota. If you thought South Dakota was empty, just wait until you get a load of this one. North Dakota takes the whole sparsely populated thing to a whole new level. It's like everything we've already talked about, but with an extra layer of cold, heat, and some serious isolation thrown in for good measure. With a population of fewer than 800,000 people, North Dakota is smaller than some neighborhoods in major U.S. cities. That's right, imagine fitting the entire population of the state into just a few city blocks. It's one of the least populated states, and when you see it in person, you'll understand why. It's a place where the elements rule and you can forget about the comforts of nearby urban centers. Let's talk about the weather. If you don't love extremes, then North Dakota is definitely not your playground. Winters here are brutally cold, think temperatures so frigid that even your breath freezes before it escapes your mouth. And when summer rolls around? It's like the complete opposite. Expect sweltering heat that could melt the paint off your car and relentless winds that feel like they're trying to blow you into the next state. The weather can be unforgiving, to say the least. But it's not just the weather that makes North Dakota feel empty, it's the sheer isolation. This state is far from any major cities or urban areas, which adds to its sense of desolation. You can drive for miles and miles and hardly see another car, let alone a person. It's the kind of place where you can really get away from it all if that's what you're looking for. North Dakota also has one thing you might not expect: oil. It's not exactly the first thing that comes to mind when you think of vacation spots, but the state is home to major oil reserves. While this has helped boost the local economy, it's not exactly a tourist draw. Instead, you're more likely to see an oil rig than a beach or resort. So why is North Dakota so empty? A combination of factors: harsh weather, isolation, and not much in the way of a booming job market outside of oil. But if you're someone who craves quiet, remote spaces, and you don't mind the cold or the heat, this state might just be your perfect escape. Just be prepared to embrace the weather, the isolation, and the occasional oil rig in the distance. North Dakota isn't for everyone, but if you're looking for true solitude, you've found it. 4. Next up, we have Vermont, where the syrup flows as smoothly as the slow pace of life. When you think of Vermont, you probably picture those picturesque, cozy farmhouses tucked away in rolling hills, especially during the fall when the foliage looks like something straight out of a painting. And honestly, that's exactly what Vermont is. From vibrant autumn colors to charming little towns that could be straight from a Hallmark movie, Vermont exudes a kind of timeless beauty that's hard to resist. But here's the twist: it's also one of the emptiest states in the country. Vermont is rural, and I mean really rural. If you're picturing big cities and a bustling population, think again. Only 38.9% of Vermonters live in urban areas, which means the rest of the state is made up of forests, farms, and tiny villages where everyone knows your name. It's an ideal location if you're looking to escape the craziness of city life, but that's also part of the reason why it feels so empty. With only about 647,000 residents, Vermont has fewer people than the city of Denver, and those 647,000 people are spread out over the entire state, giving it a very small town, wide-open feeling. Despite its small size, Vermont is actually the most moved state in the U.S. Since 2020, people are flocking to this serene haven, drawn by the slower pace, the beauty of nature, and the promise of a more peaceful life. And who can blame them? If you're tired of the rush of big city living, Vermont offers a kind of escape that's hard to find elsewhere. But here's the catch: it's not exactly the hustle and bustle that most people are used to. Life here moves at a pace slower than molasses, and you might find yourself bonding with your neighbors over their love of maple syrup, or perhaps their goats. So, if you're someone who craves that peaceful, rural lifestyle, Vermont could be your perfect match. But don't be surprised if your daily routine involves a slower pace, breathtaking landscapes, and an occasional goat in your backyard. It's a state where community is tight-knit, and living off the grid is not just a possibility, but a way of life. Vermont may be one of the least populated states, but it's filled with charm, tranquility, and a lifestyle that's as cozy as a wool sweater in the fall. Just be ready for the rural vibe and an occasional visit from a neighbor's goat. 5. Let's talk about Maine. Yeah, that far northern state where you're practically living in Canada. When you think of Maine, you might picture those vast pine forests, sparkling glacial lakes, And of course, the iconic moose roaming around. It's the kind of place that could be on the cover of a postcard, where nature takes center stage, and every morning feels like you've woken up in a scenic painting. But here's the thing: for all its beauty, Maine only has a population of 1.385 million people. So why so few? The answer: winter. Now, I'm not talking about a little snow here and there. I'm talking about a season that feels like it lasts half the year and is so cold it'll make you question your life choices. Picture this temperature so low you start to wonder if the Night King is about to roll into town. Brutal doesn't even begin to cover it. We're talking sub-zero temperatures, snowstorms that could bury a house, and enough ice to make Elsa look like she's slacking off. If you don't own a snowmobile, don't plan on spending a lot of time outside. And even if you do, you'll likely find yourself hearing your nose hairs freeze in real time. But it's not just the winter that makes Maine feel empty, it's the sheer vastness of nature. Did you know that 89% of Maine is covered in forests? Yeah, 89%. That's more trees than people. So, if you were hoping to find a bustling city with skyscrapers and crowded streets, you might want to keep driving. What you will find, though, is a place where outdoor adventures thrive, from hiking through dense woods to fishing on those glacial lakes. The state is perfect for anyone looking to escape the noise of city life and get some serious solitude in nature. Maine might be a dream for nature lovers, but it's not for everyone. If you're into a more active, fast-paced lifestyle, you might want to reconsider. But if you love hiking, fishing, and maybe even spotting a moose or two, then Maine could be the perfect place for you. Just make sure you've got a warm coat, because you're going to need it. Maine is a state of extremes, with jaw-dropping beauty and a fierce winter that keeps most people at bay. So, while Maine may be empty in terms of population, it's rich with natural wonders and an incredible sense of peace. 6. Now let's head to Wyoming, the ultimate empty state. If you're looking for a place where you can truly get away from it all, Wyoming is the answer. With a population density of just 5.9 people per square mile, you could literally walk for miles and not see a single soul. It's the second least densely populated state in the entire country, and it's not hard to see why. Wyoming doesn't have big cities or bustling urban centers. In fact, it doesn't really have much in the way of major employment opportunities either, unless you count government jobs, that is. If it weren't for that, Wyoming might not have much of an economy at all. But here's the thing: Wyoming is one of the safest places to buy a home. So if solitude is your jam, Wyoming is calling your name. The state is a vast, wide-open wonderland where the space feels endless. You'll find towering mountain ranges, sweeping prairies, and skies so vast that it's hard to imagine a world beyond them. The kind of quiet you'll find here is almost deafening. It's that peaceful. But don't be fooled by the beauty. Wyoming is not for the faint of heart. This state is made for those who are self-sufficient, who crave the great outdoors, and who don't mind a little isolation. It's a place where you can truly disconnect and reconnect with nature. Think of it like an endless adventure, where you're free to explore, but also free to be alone with your thoughts. It's a state where you can find peace, but it's not going to hand you anything on a silver platter. You need to be tough, resilient, and ready to embrace the emptiness. So if you're the kind of person who dreams of wide open spaces, breathtaking views, and the chance to get away from the chaos of modern life, Wyoming might just be the place for you. But be prepared, it's not a place to be pampered or coddled. You'll need to rely on your own resourcefulness and self-reliance to thrive here. Wyoming offers something that's hard to find in most parts of the country: a sense of true solitude and connection with the land. Just be ready to embrace the emptiness. It's the kind of freedom that comes with a bit of adventure, and if you're up for it, Wyoming could be your perfect escape. 7. From giant to tiny, let's shift gears and talk about Rhode Island, the smallest state in the US. It's so small, you could blink and miss it on a map. At just 1,034 square miles, Rhode Island is basically a speck, but what it lacks in size, it makes up for in population. Over 1 million people are packed into this tiny state, which means it's one big, tight-knit community where, quite literally, everyone knows your name whether you're ready for it or not. Here's where it gets interesting, though. Rhode Island might have all the charm of England, think cobblestone streets, historic buildings, and a rich maritime history, but these days, it's starting to feel a bit more like New York City, minus the famous skyline. The cost of living has been creeping up, and it's starting to bite. What was once a peaceful coastal escape is now getting a little too crowded for comfort. You can almost feel that urban energy in the air, just with more parking challenges. That said, Rhode Island is still packed with perks. Its beaches? Absolutely stunning. The seafood? Fresh, flavorful, and some of the best on the East Coast. And the history? It's like walking through a living history book rich with stories from the colonial era and beyond. But if you're craving peace, quiet, and affordable living, you might want to think twice. The hustle and bustle of city life has crept into this small state, and with it comes higher costs, more traffic, and less space. But don't write Rhode Island off just yet. If you love the idea of everything being within walking distance, then this is your spot. You can stroll to the beach, wander through charming parks, and even walk to the grocery store. Talk about convenience. Just don't forget to bring your patience with you, because the parking situation here? Not exactly a walk in the park. So, while Rhode Island may not be the empty state you're looking for, it's definitely one where you'll find a vibrant, bustling atmosphere. Just be prepared for the growing pains that come with such a small space filled with so many people. If you're ready to embrace that city vibe, Rhode Island has plenty to offer. But for those hoping for a quiet, peaceful life away from it all, this might not be the place to call home. 8. Welcome to South Dakota, home of two of the most iconic landmarks in the U.S., Mount Rushmore and Wall Drug. Yep, you heard that right. After passing what seems like 200 billboards, you'll come to realize that the most famous thing in this vast state is a drugstore. And honestly, that tells you a lot about South Dakota. It's big, it's cold, and it's pretty much in the middle of nowhere. We're talking about wide open spaces that stretch as far as the eye can see, making you feel like you're on another planet. The winters? Brutal. They'll make you wish you could hibernate until spring. Imagine snowstorms so fierce that the whole state feels like it's covered in a thick, white blanket of isolation. There's a sense of emptiness here that's both exhilarating and a little bit eerie. The population? Less than 1 million. For a state that's larger than Florida, minus 177% bigger. To be exact, that's shockingly sparse. In fact, South Dakota has fewer residents than Jacksonville, and all that land? It's mostly filled with farms, open plains, and not much else. Think endless fields where you can wander for miles without seeing another person. It's a place where the loneliness can be almost palpable. But don't let that scare you. If you're craving peace and quiet, South Dakota is like a blank canvas waiting for you to leave your mark. It's perfect for those who want to escape the noise, reconnect with nature, and embrace the simplicity of life. But if you're expecting bustling cities or a vibrant social scene, you'll need to adjust your expectations. Instead, you'll find truck stops here and there, tiny towns with wide streets, and little else. The beauty of South Dakota lies in its vastness and solitude. If you're the type who loves a sense of freedom that can only come from space, lots and lots of space, this could be your perfect getaway. Just don't forget to pack a warm coat for the freezing winters and maybe a good book, because when the winds blow, you might just find yourself with nothing but the sound of tumbleweeds rolling by. If you want to get away from it all, South Dakota is as away as you can get. 9. Alaska. It's so enormous that even Texas would seem small in comparison. Imagine this: if you took Alaska, split it in half, each half would still be bigger than Texas. We're talking about a state that's not just big in size, but in extremes. The mountains here aren't just tall, they pierce the clouds. Glaciers stretch as far as the eye can see, and wildlife is so abundant, it feels like stepping into a wilderness wonderland. Bears, moose, wolves, the list goes on. It's a place that could make anyone believe in magic. Yet, for all its majestic beauty, only around 733,000 people call it home. That's fewer than the population of San Francisco, spread across a state that's literally twice the size of Texas. So why is it so empty? Simple. It's practically the North Pole. During winter, this place is a true test of endurance. We're talking about 4 hours of daylight per day, temperatures that plummet to minus 40 degrees, and snowdrifts so deep they could bury a house. And then there's the darkness. We're not talking about a few cloudy days here in some parts of Alaska. The sun doesn't rise for months. It's the kind of cold that gets into your bones and doesn't let go. And roads? Let's just say they're rare. In a state as massive as Alaska, there are barely 16,000 miles of road, less than the state of Connecticut. Think about it, minus 120 Connecticut's could fit into Alaska, and there would still be space left. So, if you were hoping for a drive to the grocery store without worrying about weather conditions, you might need to rethink your plans. Alaska isn't for the faint of heart. It's a place that attracts adventurers, survivalists, and those who thrive in extreme conditions. But if you're someone who loves quiet nights, the occasional bear sighting and snow that seems to last forever, Alaska is calling your name. It's remote, raw, and beautiful in a way that no other state can match. But only the bold, the resilient, and the ready for a challenge will find themselves truly at home here. Ready to tackle the wild? Alaska will reward you with a beauty and grandeur that's unlike anything else on the planet. And there you have it, -9 states in America that are practically begging for a little more foot traffic. From vast, empty landscapes to extreme weather conditions, these places offer more than just a lack of people. They're an invitation to experience solitude, nature, and a slower pace of life. Whether it's the towering mountains of Alaska, the snow-covered plains of North Dakota, or the peaceful charm of Vermont, each of these states has its own unique story to tell. So next time you're thinking about a move, consider one of these quiet corners of America. Just make sure you're prepared for the isolation and extreme elements that come with them. If you enjoyed this dive into the emptier side of the US, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss out on any more fascinating insights. Share your thoughts. Do you think you could live in one of these states? Or is the hustle and bustle of city life more your speed? Drop a comment below, and we'll see you in the next one.